Wild Health is about optimizing you. We use genomics, blood work, biometrics, microbiome assessment, many other tests, and a conversation with you to come up with a full health optimization plan. What's the perfect diet, exercise, and supplement plan for you and only you? The Wild Health podcast is about optimizing all of us. Here we cover the cutting edge science that gives you the base to be able to apply the personalized plan we give you as a patient. To sign up as a patient, go to wildhealth.com. Or if you're a physician or health coach and you want to learn how to do this for your patients, we're happy to help as well. Wildhealth.com for all the information on becoming a patient or working with us. So what you're about to hear is a live webinar we recorded for our patients regarding some tracks that we've developed. These are optimization tracks, really dig into specific issues that people want to work on. Now, we're really excited about this, so we decided to share this with all of you as well, even if you're not our patient right now, because some of you may be interested. If you are, feel free to reach out to us via wildhealth.com, and we'd be happy to get you enrolled as a patient. If you're not interested, no worries. We're going to be coming back with more education here on the podcast in just a couple days. Talk to you soon. Hey, what we want to talk about is something that we're really excited about at Wild Health. So you've heard us talk over and over about how we think it's really important that we optimize someone from a holistic standpoint. And it looks like, Mike, I need to...
Yeah, you apparently turned off my video, which is cool. I mean, I know you're way better looking than I am, so it's better for the company.
Jody, can you help turn Mike's video on?
No.
That is a great picture.
You're the host.
Oh, so I have to do it.
Yeah, you have to do the Zoom thing.
Oh, I figured it out.
Amazing.
Okay, so you're a host now as well, Mike.
Cool.
So,
everybody,
as you've heard us talk about multiple times, oh, nice, that's the Grand Canyon.
It's Bryce Canyon, actually.
Bryce
Did
Canyon.
you ever go there?
Great. Sorry. So we're 7 minutes now in, and we've said nothing useful. So you've heard us speak multiple times about how we think it's really important to holistically optimize someone. We think medicine, it's an issue when someone has a migraine, we just talk about the brain because we're a system. We're not just a collection of individual organs, but we're a whole system where we need to think globally and as a system to optimize people. However, we also realize that many of our patients, many of you all, are doing a really incredible job with the holistic optimization. And you really want to take certain aspects of your life and health span and really push that much harder and really optimize your brain function specifically. Or if you're an athlete, you've got pro athletes who want to really optimize their athletic performance and the biohacking when it comes to that. And then others have gut issues and really want to focus on gut restoration after they've done the holistic things. And a lot of you are interested in longevity and mindfulness. So we've been working really hard to create these tracks to really let you focus in like a laser for several months on those specific things and really push that much further. So that's what we wanted to talk to you about. We wanted to answer questions, give you a quick overview of what this looks like. But the reason for the webinar format is so that you can actually ask questions about this. So how this works. We wanted to have an objective measure too for the holistic optimization. We call this personalized medicine. So frequently when we talk to people, we go, what is your goal? And we focus on that. But even if you have a specific goal, we still want to have some objective measures to just when are you globally optimized. So we've created a scoring system for that. In the scoring system,
you want me to talk about that?
Yeah, go jump into the scoring system. And
I can handle that part.
And the reason the scoring system is important is because we want to have an objective measure of when we suggest you start thinking about the optimization tracks. Because if you're not globally optimized, you probably should still be focusing on the whole system instead of an individual thing. So talk about the scoring system.
Exactly right. So the one thing we were really worried about doing these tracks is that people, because they are so cool and so interesting. And I'm sure when you start thinking about your own health, you want to jump in. Yeah, I want to do some neurofeedback through brain optimization, or I want to jump into longevity. And I think Matt and I both have lots of experience with patients that are coming to us who have these things really optimized, yet they haven't got the core aspects optimized yet. And we know that 80% of longevity and health and quality of life comes from the basics. So we've always really focused on the basics as being primary. Got to get the basics first, and then we'll talk about the peptides. Got to get the basics first, and then we'll talk about these new really interesting wearables. So we wanted to make sure that we're making everybody get to a certain point of optimizing the basics, or sort of generalized overarching holistic health, before they jump into these tracks. So in order to do that, we created some objective measures, because subjectivity is just not what we're interested in. Obviously we're very data driven in all of the care that we're giving our patients, and we want to have that also in the goals that we give our patients as well. So we created something called the Wild Health Health Score, which is going to be a combination of different biomarkers, lifestyle factors that determine whether you're to a certain level of generalized health to move on to do these tracks. And these are goals that we're shooting for on all of our patients anyway. So it's just really an objective measure that will hopefully give people sort of like a speedometer as to how fast they're going, and whether they've met the criteria that they need. So that's going to include things like markers of insulin resistance, markers of cardiovascular disease health, markers of cancer risk and fending off cancer. We're going to be looking directly at sleep, at exercise, also at gut health. And we're going to take all of that, combine it together in a score out of 100. And basically, you need to get an A before you can move on to the tracks. Matt, should we go into the specific numbers, or I think probably that's better done on an individual basis with the patients?
I think you could list what the different categories are, but not the numbers right now.
Yeah. So I just listed the categories: insulin resistance, cardiovascular disease, cancer, sleep, exercise, gut health. And each one of those has its own scoring system. The biggest ones, the top three, are insulin resistance, cardiovascular disease, and cancer risk. And then the lifestyle factors are slightly smaller in terms of their percentage points.
So does anyone have any questions about the score before we move on to talk about the specific tracks? If you do, just put it in the chat box. I was just using the chat box to make fun of Mike, but we can use it for a good purpose too.
Scott says lots of humans know what's good for them, but few execute them well. How does Wild Health plan on clients doing the basics?
Yeah. So Scott, each of these scoring systems, you're going to have specific targets, and that's what the health coach is there for, really. So for example, the sleep, you get a different score for a different amount of deep REM or total sleep, and how you improve that score in each will depend on you and your circumstance. If it's a deep sleep issue, we may talk about limiting blue light before bed. If it's a REM issue, we may talk about acetylcholine and not using an alarm clock. So each of these are going to be specific, and that's where the health coach's knowledge and our knowledge is going to come into play, and how to do those specifically. And also, like you said, even if people already know what to do, but how to do it, that's part of your question as well. So there's going to be accountability, there's going to be problem solving with the health coaches to get you there.
David asked, we need to retest or use our original data. That's a good question. If you made the cut with your original data, then you don't need to retest. But often, as you're familiar, David, we're retesting any labs that are abnormal. So, if you're not meeting the criteria for example, your LDL particle number, then yeah, we're going to retest that after interventions, just like we would with any other healthcare. This is not meant to be another step that you have to meet to continue on to the tracks. It's just meant to objectify the criteria that we're already trying to get our patients to for general overall health.
Tom asked, can you share scores with clients attending this session? Tom, you may want to clarify that. If you're asking, can you get your specific score? Absolutely. So you can reach out to your health coach and they can help you calculate that for sure. If that was your question, hopefully that answered. If not, let me know. Carl says, tell me more about the health coach, local or remote. Carl, it depends on where you are. If there's a health coach in your area, then they can meet with you in person. The vast majority of the time it is remote. We think the in-person interaction is nice, but we think even more important is matching a health coach with someone based on their needs. For example, we have a health coach who's really focused, who came from a cycling coaching background. So for our athletes, or especially cyclists, she is ideal. And then other health coaches that have other interests, whether it's longevity or neural optimization. So we think matching up with the right health coach is probably more important than them being with you locally. But if it works out, it can certainly be local. It's usually remote. So we're going to watch for more questions, but we'll start moving on to talk about some of the actual tracks. We were recently on the Ben Greenfield podcast, and we talked very specifically about the brain optimization track. So we'll mention that briefly, but we went into a little more depth with him. So the goal of the brain optimization track is to really prevent or delay cognitive decline. So maybe someone has an ApoE4 or has early Alzheimer's, or it's just to optimize your brain functioning if you're a CEO or just want to optimize your brain. It's a pretty important organ, and not many people don't want to do that. So the way we do this, and this is kind of the general structure of all the tracks, we start out by measuring where you are. So for the optimization track, it is the CNS vital signs is how we're going to measure that initially. There's a couple other measurements as well, but that's a nice validated one. And then we can decide what interventions are best based on that score. So there can be default mode network training. It may be that nutrition is going to be a big thing for you. So BDNF boosting foods. It could be that movement is going to be important for you. So we can do cross-plane exercises. There's certain things like yoga, high-intensity interval training, Tabata sets that could really be helpful, or even just strength training. It just depends on your score and your situation. And then we go through those interventions. There's also more advanced things like peptides that we could potentially use. I mentioned BDNF. So someone taking dihexa, for example, if you're interested in that. There are tons of supplements that everyone knows about and talks about, like Alpha Brain, ginkgo biloba. A lot of these things that we'll talk about individually with this person, could that be helpful for them? And then we can retest those CNS vital signs and see if the interventions that we think are going to work are working. And then we try to get to a certain point with the CNS vital signs and that score. So we measure pre, we have a post goal, and then we have a range of interventions that we would talk to you about on a personalized level to see which ones you're interested in, because some are going to be free, some are going to be expensive, some are going to have risk associated with them, but a big payoff as well. So all of those are going to be specific to the person. I mean, the movement stuff is free, and the peptides are pretty expensive. So we will talk about each of those interventions, and you decide which ones are going to be best for you based on our recommendations and our diagnosis and objective measures. Anything you want to add about the brain optimization, Mike, before we talk about a different one?
No, I think you said it. I mean, I think just with all of these, it's going to be personalized. So each one is going to start out with some sort of assessment of not just sort of where you're at, so how well your brain is working, or how well your mind is working, or what your exercise goals are, but also sort of what you're most interested in improving, right? Is it just because I think the approach to dementia prevention is in some ways a lot different than brain optimization for performance at work. So we're really going to try to hammer in on that. I mean, this is meant to be each one of these tracks is meant to be a real deep dive with the patient into that specific track. And there's lots of options. There's tracks within tracks within tracks. There's lots of options within the tracks to sort of personalize it and make it unique for each person. So I think when you first look at the track, it's going to look like a ridiculous amount of things, but not every single person is going to do each one of those things, because we're going to be focusing in on their strengths, their weaknesses, and then of course their goals.
We didn't talk about neural feedback, but I don't want to talk about it now because we talked about it quite a bit on the Ben Greenfield podcast. If you want to listen to us talk about it there, and we'll put that on our podcast as well, but a really useful tool. One thing that's very similar to brain optimization is we have a separate track called the mindfulness track. So it's similar, but it's different. This entails a lot more than just straight mindfulness and meditation, because you really can't separate the body from the mind. So we'll be focusing on mindfulness meditation, but also motivational interviewing, nutrition along with that, and a lot of other factors. So the basis of the mindfulness program, really, we want to be evidence-based as much as we can with these. So the basis is I don't know if you've heard of this or not, but there's a program called mindfulness-based stress reduction. There's a lot of good evidence for this, and that's kind of the basis. So there are going to be in-person classes, virtual classes, some self-guided readings, and quite a bit of practice. So both group sessions and individual sessions where we teach you how to meditate and increase your mindfulness. This is led by our psychiatrist, Dr. Kristen Dawson. There is a relation there. That's my wife, and a couple other people certified in mindfulness. One of those being Brittany Mallon, who is also, there is an association there with Mike Mallon. So Brittany's been through the Yale mindfulness-based stress reduction course and is a coach for that as well. And then we have several of our health coaches that are involved. So the mindfulness track, we think, is a really interesting track. If you just want to talk about overall wellness, this could be the one track for people to get into. Especially, we've noticed our patients who are already doing so many of the things they should when it comes to nutrition and exercise and biohacking, but they could use a little more mindfulness in their life, for sure. And someone just posted life-changing. I think they're talking about that course. They probably went through that course. Maybe not. Maybe they're talking about something else, but that's how I'm going to interpret their comment. It is a really good course. Yeah. So
The mindfulness track is an interesting one because it has benefits across like all aspects of health. But I think it's also like when you hear it, you don't think like, oh, I got to do that one. That's the one I need to do. But yet, like you were saying, that it might be the one that people would benefit from the most. I mean, this has been proven to, reduce anxiety, reduce depression, reduce chronic pain. There's really good research backing this sorts of mindfulness-based practice. And I think in a lot of ways, I think of the mindfulness track or the mind track, which I can't remember which one we called it, mind or mindfulness, but I think of that in relation to the brain optimization track as both being very similar, just different ways to get to a very similar place, right? So, one being maybe a little bit more spiritual, obviously more mindful, whereas another one is a little more analytical and more, raw data driven. But I do see both of them, bringing you to a point of better concentration, better focus, better comfort with your environment, reduced anxiety. I think you could probably get to from either one of these tracks, but just a very different way to get there. And I think that's probably going to be specific to each person, which one they prefer.
Well, and it's interesting, the other tracks like longevity, there's really good evidence that mindfulness improves longevity. The athletic performance, we know, you look at all the great athletes right now, and so many of them have a meditation and mindfulness practice. It's important for the athletic track. Every track we have, the mindfulness track actually makes it a little better, and there's good science.
I remember I really wanted to make these tracks like not in parallel, but in series. And I wanted everyone to have to do the mindfulness one first. And you told me I couldn't do that. So now I feel like you're going back on it.
And someone just posted that it really helped them with their gut too. And we have a gut optimization track, and there's good evidence for that connection and its effect on guts. This one is also an important one to mention, that we think community is important. So specifically for this one, we're trying to build community a little bit. So we're going to have these tracks start at certain time periods so a group can go through together, because with the mindfulness, we'll have an option of an in-person retreat, option of group classes where people can talk about their journaling and their meditation and yoga and things like that. So the community part is going to be important. We're going to try to build community as much as we can around these tracks as well. And mindfulness is one where it's especially important. The longevity track, let's talk about that really quickly. Most of you probably want to live longer. So I think a lot of people are going to be interested in this track. This track is not just focused on how long you live, but it's also on the quality of your life as well. So there'll be a lot of lifestyle-based longevity interventions like fasting protocols, longevity-based exercise plans. With exercise, it's interesting. We know exercise increases your average lifespan, but too much exercise could actually decrease it. So there's specific longevity exercises, longevity diets. We will talk about pharmaceuticals, things like metformin, rapamycin, supplements like NAD, other micronutrients, antioxidants, and then the peptides. If you want to get really fancy and start taking some of the peptides, we can talk about those. Similar to the brain optimization, we would like a diagnosis first, so we can use age calculators online, or we can do a DNA methylation test to get an objective measure. And then we can talk about the specific interventions that may help you the most with longevity.
And then retest as well. So this is one where you definitely want to retest and make sure that your interventions are having some effect. So, regular interval epigenetic testing, as well as online age calculator testing, something that we're going to employ with this with this track, and make sure that the genomic based and lifestyle based personalized decisions that we're making for longevity are actually have benefit that we hope that they're having.
And we'll use things like real age, inner age, the DNA age, epigenetic clocks. There's different ways to measure this objectively. We want to use the same one for you before and after as well. This is also a really important one to bring home the point too of getting the basics right. This is one of the main reasons why we wanted you to have an global optimization score before you jump in, because we know you want to live a long time and improve your longevity. But if we jump straight into peptides and these other supplements and we haven't optimized your sleep, regular exercise, diet, your insulin resistance, then we're kind of wasting time. So this is one that is a perfect reason why the optimization score is important. The athletic recovery and biohacking track. So in this one, this is really, I mentioned earlier, one of our health coaches who's a really great athletic coach. So she was the main driver designing this. So we'll talk about proper recovery, fueling, some of the biohacks that you can use, and then a lot of tracking as well.
This one is probably like the perfect one for a personalized approach to in a really deep dive, because there's few things that are as personalized and as specific as what exercise plan you need to meet your goals. So this is definitely something that I think is going to be perfect for this sort of like complete immersion that we're talking about during these tracks. So this is an opportunity to really get with your health coach and sit down and look really closely at your genetics and your own personal exercise goals, and develop a really unique program, and then rinse and repeat, basically, to the point that you try this, you monitor outcomes, you monitor recovery, you use devices to monitor that recovery, you get all that data, and then you go back and you rework the problem and create a new solution for it. So I think this one's going to be perfect for this sort of setup.
The assessment will be interesting on this one. For example, we'll do video call initially. We can ask you a lot of questions about different metrics for your athletic performance, but then we'll also do a call where we'll look at hip mobility, shoulder mobility, hamstring, hip flexor, quadriceps. And so we can look at that on video and have you do certain range of motion exercises to be able to measure as well. And then it's easy to, whatever your goal is, I mean, if it's a 5K time or a certain strength goal, that's a pretty easy thing to have an objective measure of before and after. And then we'll set that goal, and then we'll recheck at certain time periods as well. We'll have a calendar for when you recheck those, both video or you just do a 5K and see what your time is, kind of thing. There will be a lot of what people would call, I guess, biohacking and tracking in this one as well. So, because you can, in biohacking for different things, with wearables specifically, we can talk about a Whoop or CGM or urine strips for hydration, a lot of different stuff like that. Again, peptides, there are different peptides that could be helpful here. Some peptides, which if you're a pro athlete, you can't take because they're kind of an unfair advantage, but if you're not a pro athlete, may really help you get to your goal in a safe way as well. So if you're into biohacking, this is kind of the one that there'll be most of the really cool stuff in as well. The last one, 'cause we wanted to really limit this to kind of 30 minutes really quickly, is the gut optimization track. So the gut optimization track, so anybody that really just wants to kind of optimize their GI health, this is going to be mainly based on lifestyle modifications. A lot of us,
there'll be some diagnostics into it too, though. I mean, like, I think, for example, people who have food sensitivities or SIBO, I mean, we could quite easily get people into this track and really dive deep on that stuff and come up with creative solutions.
Yeah. We want to really focus on the basics, whole food diets, decreasing antibiotics, PPIs, things like that. We know can have a negative effect, but then there also are some supplemental things like digestive enzymes or other peptides or specific diets. You may need a FODMAP or elimination diet or gluten-free or an autoimmune paleo. There's so many different things we can try with this. The diagnostics for this are a little difficult. I mean, we can use longevity or Cyrex or NutriVal test or organic acids test. Those are a little expensive. This is a little more difficult to get objective measures here. So we could just go by symptoms if you want. This will be a personalized decision, but this is one of the harder ones to really get objective measures on, at least inexpensively. So we can do it, but this will be a track where a lot of it will be guided by your symptoms more than the objective measures. So it is 1 o'clock exactly. That was the goal, is to end right at 1 o'clock. If you have some questions, though, we'll stay on for a few more minutes because we did start several minutes late. But that is an overview. If you have other really specific questions too, you can also reach out to your health coach. The health coach can really dig into these and talk about which one may be best for you. We don't want people to do more than one at a time. You can certainly go through all of these, but we think it's good to focus on one at a time. Also, we have specific health coaches who are really pivotal or critical in designing these with us. So that health coach will be the coach through the track when you're going through it.
Also sort of encourage everybody to have an honest conversation with your coach about this. Because in a lot of ways, they might have a better sense as to which one of these you really need than you do. I know I tend to gravitate towards things that I'm already good at. So sometimes it's easy to not focus on the things that you need the most improvement in. And sometimes it's, the health coach is your perfect person to go to get some feedback on, what do you think the best track for me would be to get started? I think that's a conversation to have.
Let me say, you're already a great athlete, but you're really dumb. So you need a brain optimization or something. Is that what you mean, Mike?
You're talking about me or yourself? I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
So this is recorded and it's going to be emailed out to everyone as well. But again, ask your health coach about it, the specific questions and all the logistics of it. And we can't wait to get your feedback on it. We've been working really hard on these. We're really excited about it. But as you see ways that we can improve it, we already mentioned community. We want this to be a tribe and a global community. And so if you have recommendations for improving these, we're always trying to get better and improve. So we want to hear from you as you're going through these as well. Looks like that's all the questions. We're going to end the webinar and we'll send out the video for you to watch later if you missed it.
Thanks, guys.